Hi, my name is Cindy Ramirez, and this is my EDUC 526 Capstone Video Project. My journey at APU began just over a year ago at the start of fall 2014. Prior to APU, I had attended the University of California, Riverside and earned my Bachelor's of Arts in Liberal Studies. I graduated a few months early, which gave me extra time to pray about which grad school I would attend. I knew I wanted to receive my master's in education along with a single subject teaching credential in as little as a year, and both UCR and APU offered this type of accelerated program. After much prayer and weighing the facts, I knew that God was moving me to APU. I was convinced by the flexible schedule of night classes, its accreditations, and the distinguishing fact that it is a God-honoring university. It was during this time that I made the switch from multiple subject to single subject. After having passed a CSET in English, my first try, it became clear that this was the direction God was having me go in. Once I had started attending APU, I discovered that I could emphasize in digital teaching and learning while taking my master's degree courses, yet another amazing factor about APU's program. After having taken modules 1 and 2 for the teaching credential, I then switched to taking master courses during spring 1 and 2 of this year. I began with EDUC 511 with Dr. Gilbreath, EDUC 512 with Christy Hernandez, and EDUC 515 with Jason Salazar. It was in these classes that I learned about Symbaloo, WebQuest, professional online learning communities via Twitter and Google Community, engaging educational apps for students, and much more. It was in EDUC 514 and 522 that I later learned about making videos, video editing, flipped classrooms, and the importance and relevance of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory that emphasizes meeting the various needs of all students in the classroom. It was in EDUC 522 that I designed my original 3-week thematic unit on argumentative writing for a 10th grade honors English class. In my unit, I incorporated various types of technology and tools and the different multiple intelligences to meet the vast needs of my students. The individual lessons designed throughout information text, the writing standards, as well as reading standards for literacy in history and social studies. In my unit, students would be analyzing seminal U.S. documents of historical and literary significance to better understand the nature of argumentative writing, citing specific textual evidence from these primary and secondary sources in their writing, and after reading and analyzing such document samples, students would then move on to composing their own arguments to support claims. This thematic unit plan also met the ISTE standards, as students would be required to communicate and collaborate consistently throughout using digital media to collaborate online. Students would also be applying digital tools in this unit to gather, evaluate, and use information to strengthen their research and information literacy skills. The technologies described in this unit included Chromebooks for students to do their various projects and collaborate online, iPads and smart devices, Google, the various functions that come with Google+, Blogger, Diggo, Glogster, and Instagram, just to name a few. As part of the revisions for EDUC 526, I made sure to include which lessons would be more appropriately delivered in a traditional, flipped, or online classroom setting, as well as modifications and accommodations for my EL, SPED, and GATE students. I found many of my lessons lend themselves to a flipped and online classroom setting, thanks to the flexibility that technology provides. With such various activities and ways of delivering instruction, I designed my lessons to meet the needs of my verbal, visual, intra- and interpersonal students, logical, kinesthetic, and natural learners. The subject of my action research project was, how does one develop a stronger prayer life in the midst of overwhelming anxiety, and to what extent does prayer change things? For my action research paper, I was determined to discover and record the depth and power of prayer in my life during the next 6 weeks, as well as the results of purposefully developing a consistent Sabbath time of prayer would have on my mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. After reading various academic journals and books on the subject of prayer, I discovered that what I was referring to is known as contemplative or centering prayer, essentially prayer that is unhindered by time restrictions and distracting outside thoughts. Centering prayer was borrowed from Eastern traditions, such as the art of meditation, It is simply the practice of sitting and waiting on God. It's about clearing one's mind and meditating on God's word, his attributes, and bringing requests before him in faith. At the starting point of my project, I would pray at most 5 minutes, uninterrupted, a day. With student teaching full-time, taking a master's capstone class, credential class, and finishing up TPA 3, I was so busy and stressed out to even pray. What I discovered in these 6 weeks is that prayer is a discipline, and if one does not strategically make time to sit at God's feet, it won't just happen. When one does carve out time, however, as I discovered, God begins to move mightily. Throughout my process, I learned that the times I would pray more, I was more at peace, my emotional and mental state was higher, as well as my spiritual health. On the flip side, the times when prayer was not my priority, I was immediately more stressed out, lacking peace and joy. Regardless of the time I spent in prayer, though, I noticed that God would still answer many of my prayer requests rather quickly. In this action research process, I discovered that it is through prayer that my attitude and demeanor changes, but it is by trusting in God and having faith that my situation changes. Overall, as a result of this project, I definitely feel that my relationship and trust in God has strengthened. Using my action research plan as an example, I would say that my short journey here at Azusa Pacific University has not only prepared me to teach students of the 21st century with various digital teaching tools and content-specific pedagogy to meet the needs of all types of learners, but it has also prepared me to live out my faith as a teacher in a generation that so desperately needs Christ. I know that it is because of the grace of God that I ended up at Azusa Pacific University, and it is by the grace of God that I will move forward in my teaching career.